This is episode 112 of the Nursing Home Abuse Podcast, Nursing Home Care and the Georgia Legislature, with special guest, Representative Sharon Cooper. The Nursing Home Abuse Podcast is dedicated to providing news and information for families whose loved ones have been injured in a nursing home. Here are your hosts, Georgia attorneys Rob Schenk and Will Smith. Hello out there and welcome back. My name is Rob Schenk.
And I'm Will Smith.
We have a fantastic show for you today, and that's not just an April Fool's joke. We have a fantastic episode because we're going to be talking about advocacy of the elder, of our elder population here in Georgia and the Georgia Legislature. And we somehow were able to get, this is the first time we've ever had a guest that's an actual Georgia congressperson. So I don't know, state congressman.
Yeah, well, I point this out because I've got a very good friend who is in the legislature, and she is constantly getting mad when even her constituents call her a congresswoman, and she has to point out to them that's not the nomenclature. I am a legislator.
Georgia legislator. That's correct.
So I'm a legislator. Yeah.
Right. So we're proud to have on for the first time.
Yeah.
A Georgia legislator.
Yeah. A member of the Georgia House
of Reps.
Yes.
And that person is Representative Sharon Cooper, out of East Cobb. So, Will, can you tell us a little bit about Representative Sharon Cooper?
Yeah, she's originally from Houston, Texas, not Houston, like we say here in Georgia.
That's right.
And she is proud to have called East Cobb County, Georgia, home since 1970. She was first elected to the House of Representatives in 1996 and chosen Legislator of the Year by the Georgia Republican Party in 2000. In 2002, she was elected Minority Caucus Chairman by her Republican colleagues in the Georgia House. In 2004, she was elected Majority Caucus Chairman, which at that time made her the highest-ranking woman in the Georgia House, which is an amazing feat. In 2007, in response to her increasing responsibility as chair of the Health and Human Services Committee and her membership of the powerful House Rules Committee, she assumed the role of caucus chair emeritus. Representative Cooper holds several degrees, and this is what makes her so fascinating. She has a BS in child development, an MA in education, and an MSN in nursing, and has even written textbooks on psychiatric nursing. She's also authored a book called The Taxpayer's Tea Party, which is a how-to book that encourages the average citizen to become politically active. She's even updated this book for a second edition in July of 2010. But with that kind of background, you can see why it's so fascinating to have somebody like her advocating for the elderly, and we're very proud to have her on the program. Welcome to the show, Representative Cooper. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How about you?
We're doing well.
Doing fantastic.
So we want to go ahead and talk about some of your background because it's very unique and very interesting. Your background is actually in nursing.
Yes. I mean, I was a regular nurse and went on to get higher degrees and taught nursing school and have practiced with my husband, who was a family practitioner. So I've had a very varied background, and now I help make the laws for Georgia.
And it's very unique. We even mentioned this in our introduction of you, that you've actually written a textbook on psychiatric nursing.
I have. Long time ago when I was teaching, I did, yes.
Well, that's got to give you a unique perspective. How does it affect your perspective when you're approaching legislation?
About from being a registered nurse?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, from that perspective and my background, I laugh and say that I trained long before, when baccalaureate schools were just starting and they were in the South. I went to a diploma program run by nuns. And nuns tend to be either the nicest people in the world or they're really mean. And when it comes to the ones that used to run the hospitals, The only time I found them mean is that if it had something to do with patient care,
Right.
they were adamant about quality patient care. And so that was my first introduction to taking care of patients. And so it has been the bedrock of my foundation since then. I am for quality patient care, and the patient comes first with me.
Well, I mean, it's very clear that that's the case, and we had, as a matter of fact, we had another podcast recently where we were talking to Kathy Floyd, who's the director of the Georgia Council on Aging,
Right.
and we had asked her to just tell us a couple of representatives that have always advocated for patients and the elderly. She included your name and outgoing Representative Willard, as well as some of the biggest advocates out there.
Well, and I appreciate that. My whole adult life, as far as my work adult life, has been with patients, and it's very nice to have somebody recognize that you really care.
Yeah.
And I do care.
And so, Representative Cooper, could you walk us through, again, like the audience of this show is made up of families who have loved ones in nursing homes. And, usually the topics are going to be related to that. But you serve on the Health and Human Services Committee in the Georgia House of Representatives. Can you tell us what your role is with that, and actually what the Health and Human Services Committee actually does?
Well, I chair the Health and Human Services Committee and have since the Republicans took over in 2005. Before that, the chairman was a retired telephone lineman with a GED, and they wouldn't let anybody with a health background be on the committee, which made me very mad. And I tried for 8 years to get on the health committee, and finally Republicans took over. And so, not only as a chairman, bills come before my committee that have to do with any aspect of health. Now, bills can be put anywhere in the legislature. The speaker is the one who assigns the bill in the Georgia House. And if he wants a health bill to go to agriculture, he can do that. Usually those are bills that they don't want to pass. Like we had a seatbelt bill for older children, that one of the senators that was a doctor that had pushed for years, and it always got assigned to the agriculture committee because the guys down in South Georgia didn't want to have to wear seatbelts in their pickup trucks and all. And all of a sudden, one year it gets assigned to me, and I think it's a mistake because I'm telling the guys when they're coming up to me, no, that's a mistake. It goes to agriculture. And of course, the speaker had put it in health because he wanted it passed. That senator was retiring and a good friend of the speaker's, and he wanted to give him that bill. So a bill can go anywhere, but normally if it has something to do with health, from bills on what doctors can do, what nurses can do, about communicable diseases, about palliative care, those bills come to my health committee. As a chairman in Georgia, I decide what bills I will hear. It gives me a great deal of power. Normally I will hear a bill if I think it has any chance of passing and is not ridiculous. The only time I can tell you one bill I wouldn't let come out was I had one of my colleagues come to me and want to put a bill in that you could only donate organs if the person signed up as a donor before they died, which meant no family member after a person's death could donate a person's organs. That would have cut our organ donations by 65% in Georgia.
Wow.
And I just told him I wasn't going to hear that bill. So I hear all these bills that come before me, and my committee members, then we vote and decide what's going to move further, trying to move a bill to the floor for a vote from the House. Sort of a long way. Sorry, I didn't mean to be so long-winded.
No. This is very good information. Yeah. And so, Representative Cooper, I was recently reading an article about a terrible case of a resident of a nursing home who had developed and died from a rabid scabies infection. And in that article that I read, you were quoted as talking about how right now it's difficult for the Department of Public Health to communicate with the Department of Community Health with regards to outbreaks of infections and the regulation of long-term care facilities. Can you kind of speak to where you were coming from with that and what that means?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure the person, they died indirectly from the scabies, apparently. This is a court case, and I'm not privy to all the information to that court case, so I really can't speak about that specific case. However, when people are elderly, very often they don't have just one problem. They have multiple problems. They may be diabetic, they may have chronic lung disease, they may have heart disease, or they may have 2 or 3 or 4 of these ailments. And their immune system is then compromised, and that makes them more readily, more likely to come up with other problems, such as infections and what this case says. And then usually death in an older person is not just one from one system if they're that sick. But what concerned me and what I was hearing, and here again, that's a court case, and I am not privy to all the information, was that it seemed to be a breakdown, maybe to begin with, in our public health. They apparently, public health was notified by the nursing home of a problem. They sent them a manual to follow. And when I dug into it, I said, well, how do they make a decision to send a manual and not go out and see what was going on? And they said, well, somebody decided that it wasn't severe enough. And I said, well, how can you tell how severe it is if you don't go out and see it? And so I did call a meeting, and we did look at that. And also, the public health department did not let DCH, and the department in DCH that regulates nursing homes, they didn't apparently think it was necessary to tell them. And, how I think that would help. Well, first of all, public health nurses used to go out and check on things like this. And if we are going to oversee diseases in our state, I think we need to be on the front line. And when something like this occurs, I think somebody needs to visually and on the site inspect these kind of things. But and part of the problem we run into is that we have state public health, but just like the school systems in Georgia, we have county health boards. And they make up the rules and sort of, oversee the actual day-to-day what's happening in the public health department. And a lot of what the state public health officer can do, commissioner, and other members, is only suggest that they do something. And if these county boards of health don't want to do it, we apparently at this point have no mechanism to make them change. It's like the school board. The state school board can often make suggestions, but we have local school boards and local control. And all of this leads to some bureaucratic problems when you get this kind of cross. It's good in many ways, like local control in the schools and all, but it can have some problems. So I thought that somebody should have let DCH know.
Right.
Now, if I'd been at DCH, and I certainly think I would have sent an inspector out or somebody to look, but at least I know I would have if this had been a nursing home that had multiple complaints over the convening years.
And I didn't mean to put you on the spot, Representative Cooper, about this particular case. I guess I should have framed the question more in general. Moving forward, should there be more communication between the Department of Health and Department of the Department of Public Health and Department of Community Health? I guess.
Yes. And they made that decision after the meetings that I called.
Right.
And they came and testified, and we got into what happened and how we dropped the ball. And by we, I mean the state. And they have now instigated a different procedure where public health will let departments know.
Very good. Very good.
It didn't take us passing a bill for that, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But speaking of bills that you have passed, what can you tell us about? It looks like we have Senate Bill 202, but as I understand it, that got gutted, and it's actually House Bill 635, the Disabled Adults and Elder Persons Protection Act.
Well, elder abuse and elder problems is something that, believe it or not, is fairly new for a lot of people to start thinking about. It's sort of like child abuse was 35 years ago, when if somebody was practically beating their kid in a Walmart because that child was screaming and crying because they wanted a toy, people just turned around and went, that's a parent, that's their business. We've learned a lot about child abuse now, and turning a blind eye to that would not happen, most likely would not happen. But it's taken us, year by year, we changed our child abuse laws. And some people would think that some states have gone too far and have gone too far. And sometimes I question that. I'm still a proponent of a little good whack on the rear end, not leaving a handprint sometimes might be useful for some of these kids. I don't want to be accused of promoting child abuse on that, but I got a few whacks on my rump when I was growing up, and I don't really think it hurt me. They never left handprints.
I'm with you.
But we are now, and have been, just sort of in an infancy of recognizing what what elder abuse is, and spreading that word among people.
Yeah.
And so we have this great group of volunteers in Cobb County, not related to Cobb County government, that started an elder abuse task force. And they started bringing together bankers because of financial abuse, the police, the sheriff's office, the hospitals, the DA, anybody that they could think about, legislators that would attend, to start talking about elder abuse cases, whether it be the kind where they start these personal care homes and they're taking their people who are low income and only have their Social Security checks, and they take those and say they'll take care of them, and they let them live in squalor, to financial abuse. Somebody in my district got taken for millions of dollars.
Wow.
By two men who came in, befriended this little lady in her 90s. And it was just terrible. So this elder abuse task force started this. And they started working in Cobb. And then people started from all over the state, started calling and saying, will you come talk to my police and DAs and all? I can't tell you how many lunches I've donated money for through my campaign funds, thankfully, to buy lunch for police officers. Not only fancy lunches, I'm talking about Chick-fil-A. So they come and they share the kind of cases they're getting and the problems they're getting, and how they can work together with communication across county lines to try to stop a lot of this. And now, they've been to Muscogee County, up to Rome, and all over. They now called it not the Cobb Task Force, they call it the Northeast Georgia Task Force, and I don't know how Columbus gets included in that, but they'll go anywhere, and one of the big people in it is a former FBI agent, who is very active. And so out of that came the idea that, we have child fatality review boards.
Right. And
we don't want this to be an elderly fatality review board. We want it to be a preventative board of elder abuse. And by bringing together we felt like if each jurisdiction, DA's jurisdiction in the state, would set up these task force, and they would include people from the state in all forms of law enforcement and the people that deal with elderly, and they would talk about the problems they've seen and how to, combat them, that we could prevent a lot of elder abuse. And that's what that bill does. Now, I would have loved to have made it mandatory, but everybody, backs off and says, don't tell me you have to do that. If you tell me I have to meet 4 times a year, you have to give me more money. Right. But what's happening is the board the association and the board that overlooks DAs in the state
Mm-hmm.
has put one young lawyer that half of his job is to go around and help educate the DAs and their staffs on elder abuse and to help them set these up.
Oh, who's that?
So
do you mind if I ask?
Who is it?
Yeah.
Will Johnson.
Okay.
He works under Mr. Scandalakis.
Oh, okay. Out in Carroll County.
Right, but they made Mr. Scandalakis the head of this.
Oh,
and
really?
I'm not an attorney, so I'm trying to think of what they call this.
Okay, no, well, I mean, the prosecuting attorney counsel is probably the one
that's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
Coordinating
and they
this.
made Mr.
Yeah,
right, and he's the head, and he hired Will, and half of Will's job.
Scandalakis is a great attorney. I was actually early in my career. I was a criminal defense attorney, and have worked with him. I was a defense attorney at the time, but he was an absolutely remarkable district attorney. So I'm happy to hear that he's involved in this.
Right, and he's been very active in coming as these bills have come before the legislature. Not only Will comes to help us crack them so that we're doing them right, because like I say, I'm not an attorney, and has worked with us, and even Mr. Scandalakis has appeared to testify for us. So they have taken this on as something that's very important to that group, and they are helping educate people all over the state of Georgia, along with our task force that originated in Cobb County.
Well, that's amazing. That's very encouraging. I often go to different conferences around the nation, and unfortunately, Georgia, and this is a bipartisan issue. Georgia is not really doing that well in terms of care for the elderly, but at the same time, our legislature is highly involved. Like I mentioned, I know Wendell Willard has always been pushing for protection for the elderly. So, we got to give it to our legislature. You guys are doing a really good job combating this.
Well, thank you. I mean, Wendell was my sidekick, and when one of these bills would come up and I would think it was too legal for me to carry, I'd go to Wendell and say, "Okay, Wendell, I've got one. I need a little help with this." And
I know.
That's the nice thing about the legislature. So Wendell was great. I'm going to really miss him.
Yeah, I know. He's it's big shoes to fill too. What about the other bill, the Georgia Alzheimer's and Related Dementia Advisory Council?
Well, they're saying that by 2030, Georgia's going to be the number one state in the Southeast for citizens over 85.
Really?
And yes, by 2030, it's not that far off. We're close to 2019. That's 11 years. And we will be the number one state for citizens over 85. I think we'll probably get there before 2030. People are moving out of Florida. They had too many hurricanes, took the roofs off the house. For some reason, our coastline seems to miss a lot of that, and we're getting a lot of snowbirds that now come, and they, are going either to the Georgia Mountains or the Georgia Coast. And then we're a good state to live in. We have low taxes, and seniors are coming to our state, and I think that's great. I'm a believer that the elder people bring a lot of wisdom to us. That is something that our country used to respect, and that's part of our problem. And then we seem to want to go to a throw-away society, and that included our elderly.
Yeah.
And one of the problems we have in a nursing home, I wish I could mandate that if you have a family member in a nursing home or assisted living, I wish I could mandate that people have to go see them once a week, because there is nothing better than checking on a loved one to make sure they get, that they're getting the care they need. But you can't mandate that. And for many elderly, they are put in nursing homes, and no one ever comes to see them. In fact, this is a season of giving, and I would encourage everyone to, to reach out to somebody in a nursing home. And nursing homes often have programs where you can give somebody that wouldn't get a gift, or, you can go at least and visit them. It's so needed. And the elderly have a lot to give our society, and it makes me ill about it. So what this new bill does is an advisory committee to help us get ready for this tsunami, to look at the kind of care they're going to need. If you reach 85, there's about a 1 in 2 chance, almost 50%, maybe a little bit lower than that, but not much, that you are going to have Alzheimer's or dementia. 1 out of every 2 people. That at least you're going to start showing the signs of it. And dealing with this kind of an elderly person is very taxing. And it's a great strain on caretakers, whether they be family members or people in nursing homes. And we need more work with our 2-year colleges and even our 4-year nursing schools and our medical schools to get more education about what our senior citizens needs and how they're different, and also to work on our workforce. We have a real problem in Georgia as we've become the number 1 state for employment. We are having trouble filling jobs, and working in a nursing home is not an easy job.
No, I did it for 8 years. It is one of the hardest. I was a Marine, and then I went and worked in a nursing home, and I can tell people without question, I honestly think that 8 years in the nursing home may have been harder than the 4 years in the Marine Corps. It was the hardest thing that I've done.
It's emotionally hard. It's taxing. Older people can be grouchy and grumpy at times.
Oh, they can be combative.
They've got aches and pains, and if they have dementia so it's not an easy job. And I'm glad to say we raised the rate we pay on our nursing homes to help them cover the cost, but we still need to raise that more.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that we'll continue to do that. We went through a really bad recession, but we need to do that to help them get better people working in the direct care. There's a shortage of registered nurses. There's a shortage of LPNs, but we can't just turn out people. We can't just take 500 more nursing students and not let them get the experience they need and be trained correctly.
Yeah.
So this is all a problem. And what happens when you send down a packing store or a new packing company or something to Hayham, Georgia or Ocilla, Georgia, and that packing company is going to pay $15 an hour, then guess where a part of your staff goes?
Exactly.
And it's packing something, boxing up something is a much cleaner job than carrying bedpans and taking care of what happens in the elderly and that kind of thing. And so, we just had this workforce problem that we've got to deal with, but I am so glad to say we've been raising the amount of money that the nursing homes get, because that's the other thing. Americans are not saving for their retirement. Many think that Social Security is going to be enough to take care of them. They don't plan for living to be 85 or 90. And even if they do, sometime their children look at what mom and dad have saved as their money.
Right.
Now, I had an adopted mom, unofficial. We were together 40 years. And I was the heir to the estate and everything. And she, because of diabetes, got the same symptoms of Alzheimer's. She did not want to go in a nursing home or an assisted living when it started. And it was her money. she lived almost 4 years, and for me to have round-the-clock care, this is in Maryville, Tennessee. Thank goodness it was a small town, a really nice small town, where I knew the doctors and she knew the doctors, and but it was $110,000 a year for me to have round-the-clock care with her in her home and to keep the home up. But it was her money. I mean, I would have inherited anything left over, but it wasn't my money. It was the money that she had saved after her husband had died, and it went to taking care of her. But that is not the attitude that many Americans have. And I don't know how we change that, but people have got to realize that this care costs a lot of money.
Yeah, it's also, like you said, it's the throwaway culture. The easy solution is to put mom in a nursing home and then, visit her on Christmas and maybe one time in the summer.
Right.
But it's, you guys are doing everything that you can. So that's amazing. We really appreciate it. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up? I know that you're busy. I don't want to keep you. Any last words that you wanted to talk about, or anything that you wanted to plug yourself?
No, well, I'm very proud of the fact that we are going to national background checks, and the other thing is we're trying to move people out of nursing homes and let them stay in their homes more. That's less expensive and they're happier. And part of this new law, it's very hard the feds don't give out the information from background checks readily.
Right.
And, but we've come up with a system where they will tell, there's certain things that if you do them somewhere in this country will make you ineligible to take care of an elderly person.
Amen.
And
I don't know why that hasn't happened. Yeah.
And you won't know what the person did. You'll sort of get a green light or a red light. And my thing that I'm so proud of is that the first part of that will probably go into effect, because it's taken us time and working it out with the feds, is the part that where if I've saved for taking care of myself when I'm older and I need somebody to come into my home, whoever is in charge of me, a friend or something, because I have no children, can get a background check on that person. They'll have to pay the $50 or something. But people out in the community that want to hire people in their home, just like you would hire a housekeeper, all will be able to use this background system also to check. And I truly believe that will help us decrease a lot of abuse out there. So I'm very proud of that. The first rollout of the part with the nursing homes goes into effect on October the 19th of this coming year, where new hires will have to have the federal background check. Because before, you could do something terrible to somebody over in Alabama, and you come over in Georgia,
and they didn't
and
know.
we wouldn't know about it. And so this way, so I'm very proud of that. That was a very hard thing to get through because of how delicate it is working with the feds, and I thank them very much for working out a system with us to do that. So I'm just very proud of that. There's so much more to be done, but we are doing a lot. We care. The members of the legislature, we all find our little slots and work. And of course, anything to do with healthcare is mine. But I'm so glad that my colleagues are paying attention to it. And when we go and explain something to them, I don't usually get any blowback from it. And these bills pass with a lot of support. And for that, I'm very thankful.
Well, and Representative Cooper, we're thankful for you. We're especially losing somebody like Willard. We're glad that you'll be taking place and advocating for the elderly.
Thank you very much for doing this, and to the families that are listening. Thank you for caring about your families, and not all families put their loved ones away and never see them.
No, that's true.
For everybody that does that, I say thank you very much.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah. Great to have Representative Cooper on and educate us on some of the systems you got up there in the legislature. I keep thinking as she's talking about those cartoons we would watch when we were kids about how bills become laws and things like that.
But it's a complicated process, and it's interesting to hear about, but thankfully there is somebody out there in the legislature in Georgia fighting for elderly
and
senior citizens. Yeah.
And we just one thing before we go. This will be interesting. I think that Representative Cooper will appreciate this. Is that she mentioned how she had to take care of things with her adoptive mother in Tennessee, and
Maribel, Tennessee.
This is how this in the same sense that if you say the words Ponce de Leon Avenue, we know that you're from Atlanta.
Yeah,
you're familiar with Atlanta because you've pronounced it correctly.
Yeah.
You are East Tennessean if you pronounce that city as Maryville, when in reality it's Maryville.
Oh, it's like
it's spelled Maryville, but if you say Maryville, we know that you're
not from
an
there.
outsider.
Yeah, it's like Martinez in
Martinez, Georgia.
Martinez, right. Georgia,
but
or Ponce de Leon, or Houston County.
I remember, and if I remember correctly, that because I went to the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and that's slightly north of there. And I remember we had a professor from New York come down and was so confused because somebody kept telling him to go live up in Maryville, and he had no idea what the guy was saying. But anyway, that's going to conclude this particular episode of the Nursing Home Abuse Podcast. You can catch new episodes of the podcast every Monday morning, wherever you get your podcast from, Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or you can watch it at our website, which is nursinghomeabusepodcast.com, or on our YouTube channel. We thank again Representative Cooper, and with that, we will see you next time.
See you next time. Thanks for tuning in to the Nursing Home Abuse Podcast. Nothing said on this podcast, either by the host or the guest, should be construed as legal advice, nor is intended to create an attorney-client relationship between the host or their guest and the listener. New episodes are available every Monday on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, or on your favorite podcast app, as well as on YouTube and our website, nursinghomeabusepodcast.com. Again, that's nursinghomeabusepodcast.com. See you next time.